Meditation on Amazon Music.
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? So check this out. I'm enjoying this so far, especially those that jump on here. Especially the ones that jump on here and try to talk some shit. Especially if it's like I do want more people on here that are pretentious. Like you ain't saying nothing new, bro. This is just some gibberish, bro. But then you drop some names, or you say it's boring. It shows that you're engaging in it. I'm not really into. I'm not even trying to make money off this channel. I make money painting. I sell paintings, so I really don't need to be a content creator. I'm just doing this because I actually read on my free time. I just read stuff, so I might as well just read on the screen and see if I can get some interactions. And inevitably, I want to grow this channel and to get stuff a little mixed up on YouTube. I mean, the stuff that's going viral is garbage. It's just what do you call it? They call it clip farming. Just some ridiculous tabloid, some ridiculous scandal type stuff, and then you just clip it, and no one's actually really creating content anymore. It's like 10 people are creating content, and the rest of the people are just clipping it and sharing it. But let's do part 11. I'm going back to the recursive radicalism of Nick Fuentes. Some people might even think I'm actually clip farming. Alexa, play meditation music.
The station, Meditation on Amazon Music.
I don't even know what that was. Anyways, let's start this part 11. This is the Groyper War, the Trickster Arena, and the America First Imperium. The Groyper War, the Trickster Arena, and the America First Imperium. Every movement inherits its battles. Every generation invents its rituals. Where the line of questioning is choreographed, there the true contest is not opinion by hierarchy. All great political awakenings begin with a prank mistaken for a coup. The ranked legion and the theater of tests on ranking, infiltrations, auditorium warfare, and the ritual of adversarial questioning. Every underground political movement eventually invents ranks, titles, and internal hierarchies, not because it believes in them literally, but because it understands that identity requires a grammar, and that gamified rituals of status give coherence to an otherwise amorphous swarm. The generals and the privates of the Groypers were never military disintegrations, but mythic masks, playful sigils that allowed a network of anonymous youths to feel like participating in a secret initiation, turning democratic Q&A sessions into rehearsed battlefields. The auditorium became the proving ground where the hierarchy was enacted, a test not of ideology but of composure, timing, and the ability to carry a forbidden question into the open without trembling. Opposing organizers, aware of ritualistic structure of incursion, responded not with argument, but with counter-magic, line switching, expectation breaking, misdirection, methods as theatrical as the incursion itself. In this interplay of prank and counter-prank, both sides implicitly acknowledged that politics had become performative warfare, a contest for narrative dominance enacted through orchestrated spontaneity. The failed initiate, the one who stuttered, froze, or misdelivered the charged question, was not merely mocked, but symbolically exiled, for the movement's mythology required that its representatives speak with the calm certainty of prophetic youth, with the calm certainty of prophetic youth. Excommunication within such groups functioned not as cruelty but as pedagogy, a reminder that political insurgency requires both discipline and theatrical mastery. The Groypers' presence at events revealed a truth conservatives feared. A truth conservatives feared acknowledging that the younger generation did not recognize authority of the established gatekeepers and was willing to challenge them on their own stages. The trickster element, misdirection, infiltration, ironic uniforms, became part of the political mythos, signaling that dissent had evoked into something more agile than the institutions it challenged. This theater of interruptions exposed the fragility of the legacy's conservative ecosystem, its inability to respond organically to questions outside its pre-approved script. Thus, the Groyper phenomenon was not primarily ideological, but generational, a revolt of youths who sensed that political participation required spectacle, courage, and a willingness to disrupt the decorum of aging institutions. Every insurgent movement begins with a prank. The difference between a prank and a revolution is only whether the establishment chooses to crush it or accidentally canonize it. The promise, the appeasement, and the diplomacy of enemies. On asking for assurances, negotiating ceasefires, and the strange etiquette of hostile respect. The request, "Give me your word you won't send them again," is not about logistics, but about signaling that the era of ambush politics has matured into an era of negotiated boundaries, where former combatants recognize one another as necessary antagonists. Even adversaries follow protocols, truces, assurances, and gentlemen's agreements arise not from affection, but from an understanding that mutual destruction benefits neither. There exists a peculiar intimacy between ideological enemies who have warred for years, each knowing the other's strategy, audience, blind spots, so that finally the line between rivalry and fraternity blurs. Promises in such spaces function not as moral commitment, but as strategic acknowledgments. The recognition that escalation is easy, but de-escalation requires intention. The host who asks for assurance is not seeking protection, he is demanding symbolic recognition of his domain, his event, his authority, in short, his right to stage manage his own narrative. The guest who grants that assurance is not capitulating, but signaling that he has graduated from the youthful chaos of disruption to the more subtle art of influence. Both men know that Groyper's incursions, however irritating, forged a mythology that neither can fully disavow. Like legendary battles, they remain part of the lore that gives each figure narrative weight. Thus, even cessation of hostilities becomes a chapter in myth-making. A moment where two combatants acknowledge that the war served them both in different ways. They stand now as competitive patriarchs of rival audiences, each aware that the other can wound him rhetorically, yet also aware that public dialogue elevates them both. Truces in ideological warfare reveal a deeper truth. Enemies often understand one another better than allies, for allies are bound by illusions, while adversaries are bound by clarity. Allies are bound by illusions, while adversaries are bound by clarity. Hostile respect is the hallmark of mature insurgency. The recognition that destroying the enemy's stage also destroys your own audience. In this way, ideological war gives way to ideological diplomacy, an evolution that marks the movement's passage from adolescence to political adulthood. Promises between rivals serve as temporary bridges. They hold only as long as both parties perceive advantage, yet their symbolic weight shapes how future conflicts will be remembered. Thus, every truth reveals the same paradox. Enemies negotiate because they fear each other, but they negotiate only because they also need each other. American empire and the nationalist imaginary. On superpower identity, civilizational longing, and the mythic aura of America. To say, "I love that we are a superpower," is to confess that one's political identity is bound not merely to a nation, but to an empire. an inheritance of Rome, Spain, and Britain condensed into a techno-industrial colossus. Empire as an object of love reveals itself as aesthetic before it is moral, a fascination with scale, reach, and destiny rather than with law or virtue. The young nationalist does not love America primarily for its founding documents, but for its power to project civilization across the globe, an instinct that older conservatives often conceal behind constitutional rhetoric. In admiring empire, he admits a truth liberals and traditional conservatives avoid, that nations are not sustained by principles alone, but by demography, force, and mythic coherence. This imperial admiration does not necessarily produce tyranny, rather it reveals the desire for national self-confidence in an era of fragmentation. To view America as pan-European empire is to interpret national identity not as a set of legal rights, but as a civilizational inheritance ordered around shared ancestry and religion. Such a view contrasts sharply with the Canadian or European experience where state churches, linguistic enclaves, and bureaucratic paternalism suffocated the vitality of the old world. Thus, the dialogue between them American nationalists and Quebec-born skeptics mirror the dialectic at the heart of Western identity: empire versus liberty, tribe versus contract, order versus dissent. Political liberty, invoked both men, reveals itself as a container that can hold radically different imaginations of America, depending on what one believes liberty is for. One sees liberty as a safeguard for hierarchy and national cohesion. The other sees it as a bulwark against precisely those hierarchies when they ossify. In their exchange, it becomes clear that America's power is admired even by those who distrust America's institutions, for empire produces pride even when governance produces disappointment. Thus, love of America in the nationalist sense is not sentimental but strategic, a belief in the country's potential to shape the fate of Western civilization. This love is not naive. It acknowledges decline as historical mechanism. Empire rise, stagnate, fragment, and then regenerate through conflict. The nationalist therefore loves America as one loves a warrior, brutal, flawed, glorious, not as one loves a shrine. The counterposition, wary of empire's seductions, insists that liberty must be preserved even against America's own imperial impulses. Between these two visions lies the core of American argument, whether the nation should be a light unto the world or a fortress protecting its inheritance. Reaction, liberty, and the calibration of order on reactionary tendencies, moderated authoritarianism, libertarian excess, and post-liberal drift. The guest admission, "I am more reactionary than conservative," reveals the intellectual migration of a generation disillusioned with libertarian promise and bored with managerial liberalism. Reaction is not hatred of change, but recognition that unbounded liberty dissolves communities faster than it empowers individuals. There's no liberty without justice. I suppose they both define each other, but if we want to understand, they're both kind of vented around each other. I could care for either liberty or justice. I think I care more for the spontaneous accident, the revelation, the prophecy. It's a creative activity. Sometimes when we focus so much on liberty and justice and law, all we're doing is just rearranging fossils, rearranging old sentences. No, I think we need to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with historically arranging old sentences, but they hit ceilings, they create boundaries, and there's ways of inventing a new framework, just like this. Reading these statements over and over again, seeing how they sit with people. His rejection of accusation that he is a fascist or totalitarian underscores a truth outsiders cannot grasp. Reactionary thought in America today is defined less by authoritarian ambition than by exhaustion with libertarian naivety. He insists on a calibrated order, limits on degeneracy, restoration of norms, protection of cultural continuity rather than a police state. The libertarian host paradoxically agrees on some of these limits, revealing that every defender of maximal freedom acknowledges the need for boundaries when hyper-individualism becomes socially corrosive. They converge in these they converge in their critique of the OnlyFans libertarianism, where freedom becomes indistinguishable from self-destruction and the market becomes an alibi for moral abdiction. Here the two glimpse the shared intuition that the state must sometimes enforce guardrails where culture alone can no longer restrain appetite. Yet they diverge on metaphysics. One believes order flows from inherited identity. The other believes order flows from universal principles embedded in constitutional designs. In the divergence lies the contemporary American rift between reactionary nationalism and conservative liberalism, each diagnosing the same disease but prescribing incompatible cures. It's the lack of justice that stifles creativity. Elements go rogue, self-serving reigns. I get what you're saying. If you're young, that should make sense. I think as you age, the thing is with justice, justice is just revenge. But then also there's so much ridiculousness when there's just so many people who just want to have opinions and then shame the other person for having a different opinion. So there's something interesting in the, I guess in that word, self-serving. If everybody is self-serving rather than trying to propose an idea and then working together to bring forth something new. I mean, this sounds hopeful and utopian, but it's a little less than that. I just don't care for the word justice. It just sounds like there's somebody who's trying to seek revenge on somebody. I think I care more for adversarialism, competition, I guess, the intimacy of sport. Anyways, but I do understand what you're saying. Political liberty becomes the discursive ground where they negotiate those differences. An ideal both cherish but interpret through different civilizational logics. The nationalist sees liberty as a privilege granted to a coherent people. The libertarian sees liberty as a natural right granted to individuals regardless of tribe. Yeah, I get what you're saying. There is something with Leo Strauss, right? The conservative thinker. You could Google him, or maybe you already know him. I think maybe what I'm trying to put on this channel is it's probably just an advanced class. I get the order of normal people need perimeters. They need order. I think I'm at my moment in my life where I'm trying to invent new orders. It's more artistic for me at this point. It's more inventive. There's more of an improvisation. Sure, you can even go even further. You can even talk about the ancient Greeks or the ancient Chinese. You can go into Confucianism. It's all Aristotle. I'm more of a Platonist. If you want to get an Aristotle and try to framework everything into categories. That's fine. It does create order and understanding. It creates a language. It creates textbooks. I get it. Their dialogue illuminates the future of the American right, a struggle not between freedom and authoritarianism, but between competing visions of what liberty is for. It is in this space between empire and republic, identity and contract, hierarchy and individualism that the next ideological synthesis must emerge. Thus, their conversation becomes a microcosm of the American civilization's debate. The civilizational debate itself compressed into 2 chairs and a camera. The nationalist sees liberty as privilege granted to a coherent people. The libertarian sees liberty as a natural right granted to individuals regardless of tribe. Let's leave on that statement. The nationalist sees liberty as a privilege granted to a coherent people. The libertarian sees liberty as a natural right granted to individuals regardless of tribe. Either way, there needs to be evidence of coherency. There needs to be reward. There needs to be a give and take. Something that is recorded of evidence. Anyways, this is part 11 of Recursive Radicalism of Nick Fuentes. Check out my art at zuccagallery.com. Google the name Abe Zucca, see what's up. I'll see you guys later. I'll answer what is justice in the next part. Possibly I'll keep it in mind. I'll see you later.